I'm Kellen B. Marion, and welcome to STEM to Share. In today's episode, I'm speaking with a research scientist from the National Center of Atmospheric Research.
My name is Tom, or Thomas Hopson, Tom for short, and I work for the National Center for Atmospheric Research, where I'm a research scientist or Product 2 scientist here at NCAR. And we're based here in Boulder, Colorado.
What is a research scientist?
Scientist is someone who is focused primarily on, if you will, doing a whole variety of research, of course, as opposed to teaching. Although we at NCAR do also do a fair amount of teaching and especially advising of other graduate students and postdocs as an example. But we're focused primarily in the atmospheric science and earth sciences domain. And so we do a lot of work that's both theoretical research, and also we do a lot of work for applications that really impact us. We all know that weather is very significant in our lives, and a lot of weather research really impacts transportation, disease spread, what you're going to do with the ball fields tomorrow, whatever. So it's a broad field.
What does the National Center for Atmospheric Research do?
A whole variety of things. We have different laboratories within within NCAR for short. But very briefly, we have a group that develops the atmospheric models that tell us what's going to happen with climate change. We have modeling, and we run the models that tell us what's also going to happen on not only 10, 20, 100 years out with climate change, but what else is going to happen, let's say, next season for water and heat, let's say, that might impact crops and growth. We have another group that looks at the sun and how the sun changes its output. Another group that looks at weather, what's going to happen from now to the next 10 days and forecasting what's going to happen. Other groups that look at ocean modeling. My group does applications, where we work with a whole variety of sectors of people who care about what's happening with, again, weather impacts for transportation, the military, groups that look at renewable energy. So it's a whole spectrum of things. We also support the universities in trying to provide research experiments that help us improve our knowledge of the atmosphere.
What do you research?
A whole variety of things. Like a lot of scientists, we don't necessarily stay in one profession or one topic area. I do a lot of work in flood forecasting. So I've worked with India and Bangladesh, Ethiopia, and Sudan to try to help them to improve how they forecast floods that can impact people's livelihoods. But I've also done some work in forecasting meningitis outbreaks in Africa, in what's called the meningitis belt of Africa.
I see you wrote an article about flash floods produced by rainstorms in Bangladesh. Why would you study what is happening in Bangladesh and not something in the U.S.?
I think we all, as scientists, have an obligation to serve humanity wherever that humanity might be, right? And in addition, the knowledge that we learn overseas can also come back and influence and impact how we actually forecast floods here in the United States. So it's a win-win. We work with colleagues across the world, which is really an exciting part of what we do, is that we work with colleagues, like I said, all across the globe, and they help us also improve our research while we help them improve their research also, and how they forecast floods.
What inspired you to go into a career in floods and disease?
I naturally like physics and the mathematics. So I've always had an appreciation for sort of the theoretical side of how math and science has evolved throughout the millennium. But at the same time, even though I appreciate the theory, I really wanted to go into a field that actually had what we would say real world applications. And for me, I knew that atmospheric science both had, in my opinion, the elegance of how physics works and how things are predictable or not predictable. At the same time, I could solve problems that I think really can help people on a day-to-day basis in terms of how they go about their lives and for their safety.
Can you tell me a little bit about your educational background?
My bachelor's degree was in physics, And then I sort of took a wandering route. You know, a lot of people have a very quick linear route to going into their field. For me, I took a sort of a wandering route. My undergraduate was in physics, but after that, I actually traveled uh, in Latin America for about half a year. I went back and I got a master's degree in civil engineering because I wanted to do some work helping people with water internationally. So then I actually took at a Fulbright fellowship, and I lived in Zimbabwe and worked with uh, rainfall estimation and forecasting in Southern Africa for about a year and a half. And then I came back to the United States and said, well, you know, I think to be most beneficial, given my particular interests and my abilities, I went back then at I would consider sort of a later period in my life, my mid 30s, and got a PhD. And then from that, I've become a research scientist at NCAR. So let me just say, I just want to add that you don't have to do a linear route to choose a STEM field. Sometimes it's really nice for certain people to really get a whole variety, a whole background of different things in life before going back to a STEM field. Don't, you know, it's good to, I know a lot of friends that were Peace Corps volunteers before going into a STEM field. So you don't feel like you don't necessarily miss the boat, so to speak, if you don't go right into it right after high school or undergraduate school.
What do you find exciting about your job?
What I find so exciting is the mix of what I would consider sort of the theoretical elegance of physics and math, and how that interplays, and it can actually, our knowledge of those fields can actually impact people's day-to-day livelihoods, you know, in terms of forecasting disease, in terms of forecasting floods. It's a really neat thing that theory can actually really have minute to minute, hour to hour, or century in the case of climate change impacts on people's lives. Well, I can still enjoy the intellectual curiosity that these fields have inherently to them.
What advice would you give to students looking to enter a profession like yours?
Strongly suggest that they can really actively reach out to scientists who are already established in the field and find programs that might be available for them that can really give them a taste for what the field might be like. These fields are not necessarily for everybody, and there's no harm in trying it out and then maybe leaving, or learning what you have and applying it to a completely different field. So, but to get that knowledge, going into internship programs really provides a very quick route for people to sort of explore the STEM fields and still having opportunities to do whatever feels right for them. So as an example, if I may, NCAR has a program called the SOARS program for typically minority communities, to give them access into some training to work with scientists during their undergraduate years here at NCAR. And I think a lot of institutes like that, National Renewable Energy Laboratory nearby here in Golden, Colorado, I think NIH, National Institute of Health, whole variety of federal institutions have training programs that I think would be excellent for people to try to apply for and just test out the field and see how it works for you.
Why is India and Bangladesh such an interesting place to research?
One, they have a very interesting physical phenomenon called the monsoon system. So just inherently the atmosphere, the dynamics, if you will, that controls what creates rainfall over the Indian subcontinent is a very interesting phenomenon. At the same time, India and Bangladesh have some of the oldest cultures in the world. So they have a rich, rich cultural heritage. So it's just fascinating to be able to also work with colleagues and understand their perspectives on how the world works, if you will. So being able to do work with a field that's very fascinating, this Indian monsoon, while working with people that have a really neat, interesting cultural perspective has been really I feel very, very fortunate to do. In addition, India, probably more than any other country in the world, has been greatly impacted by flooding that happens in their country.
How do you spend your time at work?
Is that, you know, years and years ago, after I'd come back from travel, I think I mentioned I traveled in Latin America, I swore I would never take a job that required more than 50% screen time looking at a computer. And the reality is that is not the truth anymore for what I do. I spend almost 100% of my time, other than when I'm traveling and visiting with colleagues internationally, in front of a computer terminal. And but with that said, I'm also doing theoretical calculations and programming and working with colleagues and going to meetings and things of this sort. But 90%, I probably is a better accurate number, 90% of my actual working life deals with working at a computer. And this is an important consideration. I think people that maybe are more gregarious, need lots and lots of social interactions. I'm not sure necessarily, at least my particular STEM field may or may not be correct for them. So one has to be careful about that. That's why I was encouraging doing internship programs. You have to find your natural balance between what you like to do, what you can do, and what makes you happy on a day-to-day basis. It's not just the theory of this job that's so exciting, but you have to be able to realize what's a day-to-day experience like. And if, for my case, I've grown to appreciate the power of computers, but if you don't like that interface, then I might, there are other fields, probably even STEM, that might be a little bit more attractive to you.
Thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and follow me on social media. Links are in the description below. Bye!